morning. This is Bolaji Ali from TVapex. We're just outside Parliament Square in this very cold and dingy weather. We're outside here with the Ukrainian group who are protesting against the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. I've got here the spokesman for the group. His name is
Sergei Burnus. I represent London Euromaidan Ukrainian community movement in London. And we are here today to deliver our message to the British government, to the Parliament, where the Prime Minister is speaking currently, that Ukraine needs support, and Britain, as a guarantor of the Ukrainian sovereignty and territorial integrity, must commit to the international law obligations and help by providing military weapons, defensive weapons, and applying tougher Iran-style sanctions for Russia. And this is why we are here. We want just to have our voices heard and make the British government take proper decisions and support Ukraine in these hard times.
Currently, there's been discussions between the French government, the German government, and Ukraine and the Russian government. Are you saying that is not enough?
Of course it's not enough. The discussions are fine when this diplomatic conversation and dialogue is fulfilled and followed. In our case, we see that every single agreement on ceasefire with Russia is always violated. So the only way to protect Ukraine is to provide proper military support for Ukrainian army, because Russian invasion continues on a daily basis. More and more troops and tanks come inside of Ukraine, and of course economic and financial pressure must be put on the Russian business and the Russia as a state. So those diplomatic talks were unresultful.
Some may argue that there's already been pressure on the Russian government. There's been sanctions currently taking place. And the sanctions are hurting the people of Russia. Isn't that enough?
Actually, the sanctions were applied against the Russian state-owned firms and banks, and sanctions were applied against certain politicians. They were not directed on general population, general public of Russia. So, of course, as we see Russia is continuing its aggressive policy, then the sanctions are not enough, and there must be some effective measures taken, like cutting off from the interbank SWIFT system, like introducing visa bans for the politicians, for the oligarchs who are enjoying being in London and doing business here. So these effective measures should be taken.
Okay. The Russian government may argue that the reason why they're invading part of Ukraine is because there are Russians there, and the Russians need to be protected. What do you say to that?
There are about 50,000 Russians in London, so is this the reason to invade London as well? 40 or 50% of Ukrainian population are Russian-speaking, including myself, and we are Ukrainians. We don't need protection, and we don't need invasion or anyone to come to protect us, because it's a normal world where ethnic minorities have their rights, have their languages, and there is no need for external invasion or protection. So this is just a fake message, and it shouldn't be taken seriously.
Isn't the real battle is the battle between the Russians on one hand and Europe on the other hand? It seems there's a struggle to get who's going to get Ukraine amongst these two powerful forces, and some may say that Europe is trying to get a stronger hand over Ukraine. What do you say to that?
On this question, I would answer from the Ukrainian perspective. It's not who is influencing, it's what Ukrainian people want to associate with, and what Ukraine as a country want to be with. Soviet Union, Russian perspective, or European, modern, where the human rights, where the rule of law prevails. Of course, we would like to be a modern, prosperous country, and Europe is an example. This is why Ukraine signed association agreement, and this is why we tend to become closer with Europe rather than with Russia, which was always putting pressure on Ukraine during history. So this is, I think, the will of Ukrainian people should be taken in first instance.
So lastly, what would you say is the 3 things you want David Cameron to do? The 3 top things you want David Cameron to do now?
We want Britain to apply Iran-style sanctions on Russian businesses and Russia as a state. We want United Kingdom to provide a defensive weapon to Ukraine, to enable Ukraine to protect its territory, and want United Kingdom to provide humanitarian assistance to Ukraine as we are suffering foreign aggression.
Thank you very much.